Okay, so today we're going to take a deep dive and like really get to know this guy, Gerry Carew.
Oh yeah, Gerry Carew.
So looking at his career, it's pretty amazing. Like the guy has done it all.
30 plus years in all sorts of different things.
Yeah, and like it's not just bouncing around randomly. It's like he picks up a skill and masters it, and then he moves on.
Exactly. And I mean, you see that in video production, advertising, sales training, even podcasting.
Podcasting.
He's just got this incredible drive to understand, people and how businesses work.
Yeah, and like how all those things kind of fit together.
Right. And so when you look at his career path, it's really interesting because, a lot of times people think, oh, you got to climb the ladder, you got to move up in the ranks.
Right.
But Gerry's path, it's more like he's creating a web, he's going in different directions.
Yeah.
He's mastering one thing and then he's like, okay, what's the next challenge?
Totally. And the thing is, he's not afraid to like jump into something brand new, even if it's really demanding.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the perfect example of that is that he spent a lot of time in a 100% commission-based environment.
Ooh, that's pressure.
That's a lot of pressure. Yeah, and that means you have to constantly prove your value.
Yeah, to deliver.
You got to build those relationships. You can't just coast.
Right.
And he thrived in that environment.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could tell that like he's not afraid to get his hands dirty and try new things. When you look at how he created his video profile.
Oh, yeah.
Using a combination of like ChatGPT and Notebook LM, even drone footage.
It's a really fascinating mix of cutting-edge technology.
Yeah, like what made him decide to use those specific tools?
I think he recognized the power of AI for crafting a really personalized script. And,
Yeah.
ChatGPT and Notebook LM are great for that. But then he combines that with, stunning visuals, drone footage that gives you this dynamic, engaging feel. And then you see his LinkedIn profile woven in. It's almost like he's saying, look, I understand where marketing is going.
Yeah. It's not just about where it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just about the present. It's about the future.
And speaking of future, that kind of brings us to Gale Force Wins.
Yeah.
The podcast he started with his lifelong friend, Alan Dale.
Before we dive into the podcast, can we just unpack that title for a second?
Oh, yeah.
Gale Force Wins. It's so evocative.
Yeah.
You think about resilience, you think about momentum.
Definitely.
But what's the core mission of the podcast?
Well, I think it's really interesting because it's not your typical business podcast where it's just like, here's how to make $1 million or whatever.
Right.
It's more about these really authentic conversations with entrepreneurs, creative people, athletes, anyone who's overcome obstacles to achieve something.
Ah, so it's not just about the wins, it's about the journey.
Yeah, and they really dig deep into the journey, the struggles, the setbacks, the mindset.
I love that focus on mindset because that's where the real gold is.
Totally, and it's inspiring,
Yeah.
You come away from listening to an episode of Gale Force Wins and you're like, okay, I could tackle my own challenges.
It's like a shot of motivation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, speaking of connecting with Gerry, I should probably share his contact info.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
His cell is 1-709-765-5988, and his email is jerry@galeforcewins.com.
So what strikes me is that this passion for storytelling that we see in his video profile, it just carries through everything he does. It's there in the podcast too. And, he really gets it.
Like a good story can connect with people in a way that just information can't.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that human element. And, with his background in video production, advertising, sales training.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy must have a million stories.
I bet. And so I have a question for you.
Okay.
If you could sit down with Gerry and just pick his brain for an hour, what would you ask him?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. What would I ask someone who's been so successful across so many industries?
It's a lot to think about, but I think it would be an amazing conversation.
It would. And you know what? While you're thinking about that question, why don't you go check out Gale Force Wins?
That's a great idea. You'll get to hear Gerry's insights firsthand.
And his stories.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe it'll spark an idea for that one question you'd ask him if you ever got the chance.
Yeah, keep that in mind, listeners. What's your question for Gerry?
All right, until next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.